Good morning, everybody. We're going to get started here in just another minute or so. I'm just waiting for everybody to come on in. All right, everybody. Welcome to SCORE Akron's workshop today. My name is Laura. I'm going to be here to help Mary with keeping track of the Q&A and the chat. We really want to have as much interaction as we can today. So feel free to raise your hand or type questions in the Q&A or the chat. At the end of today, you will receive an email from me that will contain the recording of this as well as the slides. So you don't have to feverishly write down everything that Mary says. You'll get a copy of everything. So with that, Mary, are you ready?
Good deal. Thank you, Laura. Good morning, everybody. All right, to start, I'm going to ask you to change hats for a second. Take off your business owner hat and put on your customer hat. So as a customer, think about something that happened that just really a great customer experience. Maybe it was going into your favorite local restaurant. You go into the restaurant, they know your name. You don't have to wait to be seated. You get seated, they bring you your menu and your water. The meal is consistent, and you don't have to wait a half an hour for your check. Delightful experience, so much so that you may choose to go back there more frequently than you would have otherwise. You tell your friends about the place, and you might even tip your server a little bit more because you appreciate the excellent service. Now that restaurant has made sure that you have a good customer experience. And we're going to kind of learn from that today and going to show you some tools that you can use to drive a positive customer experience within your own business. Now, before we start, I'd like to share a little bit about SCORE with you. Laura and I are part of the Akron SCORE chapter, and Akron SCORE is part of a nationwide network of about 225 chapters, but they're all united with a singular mission. Our mission is to foster a vibrant small business community, and we do that through training and through mentoring. At the end of the day, our vision, what we'd like to see, is that every person has the support that they need to be successful in a small business if that's what they should choose. So we do that both at national level with about 10,000 volunteers across 225 chapters. And we also do it at the Akron level. Now the Akron chapter consists of about 40 mentors, and we serve the 5-county area: Mahoning, Medina, Portage, Summit, and Wayne County. And in those two counties, we provide service to our clients through mentoring and through training classes like this. As a matter of fact, since we've been serving people, we have served 55,000 clients in this service area. And how do we do that? Well, the first and most of our services are through mentoring. And mentoring is when you work one-on-one with a business in order to help them get the answers that they need to their business questions and help them move things forward. This counseling or mentoring is free. It is confidential. And the advantage to you is that you get experience of people who've worked in either a large business or in their own business for years, so you get real world experience. Now, a lot of times people ask us, well, I really don't want an ongoing relationship. I just have a question. And that's okay. You drive how this relationship goes. So you're dealing with a mentor, it could be a one and done, or it could be an ongoing relationship. Some of our relationships have actually lasted years with individual clients. Now, the second thing we do is a series of webinars. And the webinars are sessions like this. We do things like financing, business plan 101. There's a series on social media. And for a complete list of those webinars, both live and recorded, you can go to www.akron.score.org. Now, excuse me, it's score.akron.org. Okay, now understanding the customer. What we're going to talk about today is how you can drive profitability by enhancing your customer's experience. And think about it. If your customers come back, if you're able to retain them, if they pass on good news about you, if they're willing to pay a little bit more for some additional services because they know they'll get good, consistent service from you, then that is drives your profitability. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, I would like to tell you a little bit of the story about how we got started with this. A couple of years ago, my husband and I wanted to get our deck painted. No big deal, right? So I called, I could ask some friends, nobody knew anybody. I looked things up online, got their contact information, and I called 3 different painters trying to get someone to come out and look at our deck and give us a quote. Well, the first guy, he never even returned my phone call. The second guy did call me back, but never showed. It was only the third gentleman who actually showed, gave us a quote, and did an excellent job. Guess who got the work? The third guy, right? I have absolutely no idea why the first 2 didn't follow up with us. You know, they might have said, Mary's job's too small, Mary's job's too big, I don't have time for that, I'm too busy. And okay, that's fine. Except for the fact of next year, certainly not gonna call them. I would never recommend them. And for all they knew, I could have had 2 apartment houses that I wanted to get done, and they've lost out on a big project. So paying attention to those very small things during the customer experience really does make a difference to your bottom line. Pop quiz. All right, so if you had to answer this question, what would you say? Which of the following is true? The customer's experience is as important as the products or services that you provide. B, many customers will actually pay more if they're assured of a good customer experience. C, customers may walk away if they feel that they've had a poor customer experience. Or D, all of the above.
All right, everybody, go ahead, type that in the Q&A or the chat. We have D, 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 D. Lots of D's so far, Mary.
Well, it sounds like everybody's got this, and you are absolutely correct. The reason you want to pay attention to the customer experience is because it can drive profitability. Matter of fact, if you take a look at some statistics, 68% of people said they would have to pay, let me back up. 68% say that the experience is every bit as important to them as the service or the product that you offer. A full 61% indicate that they would pay up to 5% more if they were assured of getting good experience. Now think about what that 5% could mean to your bottom line in your business. Not only that, but 66% said they would walk away after a single bad experience. And as you all know, it's much harder to get new customers than to maintain existing customers. So all these things point to the need to focus on a little bit more on the customer service, customer experience, the customer journey, in order to drive profitability within our businesses. Now, the good news is it's really not that hard. So today we're going to show you a 3-step process that you can use to evaluate the customer journey for your customers. The very first step is understanding who your customers are. That's the who of things. The next is mapping the customer journey or the how of things. And then finally, identifying opportunities for improvement. So today we'll walk through each one of these steps and then we'll wrap up with a challenge for you. So before I move forward, are there any questions?
So far, no questions.
Okay, so step 1, understanding your customer. Now, a lot of us are going to say, oh man, I know my customers. I know who they are. But we want to take it a little bit deeper level. We want to take it below the age, male, female, community that they live in. to actually understand what's driving our customers, what their pain points are, and what they might be willing to pay for a little bit more. And the tool that we're going to use for that is called a customer persona. Now, Jeff Bezos said, you start with the customer and work your way backwards. And that's exactly what that customer persona will help us do. And it looks like this. Don't worry about reading all the details. We'll go through it second by second, but I wanted to show you a picture of what a customer persona can look like. This is one template. You'll find plenty online. We'll send you this at the end of the meeting, but you're going to find plenty online. And if you want to modify it for your own purposes, that's fine. The goal is to understand who your primary customers are, what their pain points are, what their emotions are, what drives them to buy from you, and possibly what services that you can have. This persona is something you put up on the bulletin board in your office to constantly remind you of who you're serving. Now, large companies and small use this. For example, at Progressive, they have their customers are called the Robinsons. And the Robinsons are a typical middle-class suburban family. And if you walk around the halls of Progressive company, you will hear the Robinsons mentioned over and over again. It helps them drive system decisions, procedural decisions, and marketing decisions. So this can be a tool for you to do the same. Now, the customer persona actually provides a lot of information. So to kind of walk through how we're going to create this document. And you're going to hear some clicking here as I increase my screen size. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is identify who your customers are. In the case of our painter, we've got a couple options. Does our painter want to deal with individual homeowners? Does our painter deal with landlords? Maybe their target market is property owners, or maybe they want to do commercial buildings. Each one of these things is going to drive different decisions within their business services. Once you decide who the customers are that you are serving, you want to gather information about them. And this goes beyond what you just know intuitively. Things to think about is maybe you could interview some of your key customers. Maybe you do an exit survey that you send them after they're dealing with you. Perhaps you would want to ask your associates, if you're a servers in a restaurant or sales associates in a retail business, what are you hearing? Because they're the ones that are closest to the customers. Other sources provide, some of the large companies do market research, which can help you. And there's also some online sources that you can use to go a little bit deeper into what your customers are looking for. And then you would create the customer persona. That document is going to contain several pieces of information. Demographics, which we're all used to, age, gender, where we live, how much we make, that type of thing. But some of the things that are a little bit different is helps us get into understanding why they make the decisions. For example, what are their goals? What challenges are those customers facing? Do they have, in some cases, it might matter what their personality is or what their motivations are. You might also want to consider how they use social media, because that's going to vary based on the different groups, depending on what your product is. Some other things that are likely to be included here are some direct quotes from your customers. Why? Because it gives you a better understanding of where they're coming from and helps you feel that you actually know them. And then finally, you would likely to include what services you could provide for those customers. So here's that first part, the demographics. This is the easy part. Does anybody have an idea why I would include a picture at the top left of the Smith?
Anyone? I have a theory.
Okay.
Is it to make them more real, I guess?
Exactly, Laura. Thank you.
I don't know what I'm trying to say.
The purpose of it is to make so that you feel like you know them better. So it makes them more real. So that makes them more relatable to you. By having that picture, you can picture yeah, it's redundant, isn't it? By the picture, you can actually see who you're dealing with. And one thing I think I forgot to mention is that you're going to do this for your top 1 to 3 customers. Usually those top customers are the ones that account for 90% of your profits. So depending on what your customer base is, you would do this for those different groups. All right, so the next group of information is the why, the identifiers, learning a little bit more about them. So in this case, we know that the Smith, we've identified that they're probably in their 60s, retired. So they might have communication preferences. They might not like text. They might prefer a phone call or email. They probably use Facebook. So if you send stuff to Instagram, you're not going to reach them, right? They also have stated through our research, we know that they have some goals that we can help them achieve. Their home ownership and their repairs have just gotten to be a little bit much for them, but they still want to have a beautiful home that they can feel confident and comfortable entertaining in. So these challenges is something that our painter can help them with. So then the last pieces of information we might want to include are some real quotes from those individuals, but as well as what we can do for them. And notice here, as we're going through this exercise, I contacted the painter because I wanted deck painting. But as I'm going through this exercise, trying to figure out how we can best serve our customers, I've identified some additional sales opportunities. One, maybe in between years, when they don't need things painted, maybe they'd like some deck cleaning. Or maybe we can also offer some replacement of warped floorboards for our customers. So here are some new potential profit opportunities for our business. I'm pulling it all together. This is the same thing that you saw before. I put all that information on a single picture. Questions on developing a customer persona. And as mentioned earlier, we will be sending you that template where you can find plenty of them online. Okay, so now we've talked about the who, the persona, the customers that we're going to deal with. And we've got a good picture of who they are. We know who the customers are, we know what they want and what's driving them. Our next step is to map that customer journey or to better understand the customer experience. Remember, when I was talking with my different painters, they didn't call me back because maybe I was too small for them or they figured, I don't need to deal with it. They were looking at things from their perspective, not from the customer's perspective. This exercise is going to have us take a look at it from the customer's perspective. And why that's so important is because the customer's perspective becomes our reality. Here's an example of a customer map, customer journey map. And this one, there's lots of different ways of doing this. I did this in a spreadsheet because that's something that everybody has access to and is the easiest to do. So across the top, you have the major steps of what you dealt with a customer. And below each one of those major steps, for example, find a supplier, you have the task that the customer took. You have what motivated them, what their touch points are, what their pain points are. And at the very bottom, you can have an evaluation of what the customer's experience was on that step. So we're going to walk through how you would create this document for your business. So the very first thing you need to do is identify the major touch points of how your business touches the client. It could be email, it could be a phone call. It may be your web entry online. There's a lot of areas that the customer sees you and interacts with you without ever having talked to anybody. So we will identify what those major activities are. We'll then list the associated tasks for each one of those. As you're going through this exercise, if you find things get too complicated, you can break it down. So for example, you might want to consider having a map for your customers that deal with you online and a map for your people that come into your retail store. And that's fine. Whatever is your tool So use it as you feel best. The important thing is to identify how you relate to that customer. So let's take a look at our painter's experience here. So when I went out to deal with my painter, I followed this process. The very first thing I did was I tried to find a painter that I could deal with. I then reached out to make an appointment with them. So I called them and I said, got a voicemail and said, hey, this is Joe. Leave a message. No idea who Joe is, but left a message. Then make an appointment for them to come out and do a quote. Once they came out with a quote, then we received and approved the quote. Only then did they start to do the work. So notice here, an awful lot of my dealings with this painter happened to be before I ever saw them, before I ever met them, and certainly before we ever agreed to do work. I've already made a very good assertion of who this individual is and got a good impression of who they are. So they then come out and do the work. I approved it, received the invoice, paid the invoice. Another thing to notice here is at the end of the day, I paid the invoice, never heard from them again. They missed some opportunities. Can anybody suggest how our painter could have taken advantage of created more opportunities by dealing with us after the invoice was paid?
Anyone?
So I'll give you a couple ideas and stimulate your thoughts here. Maybe they sent a thank you note. Maybe the following spring, they sent a note saying, hey, we cleaned your deck, we painted your deck last year. Can we wash it for you this year? Need anything else? They could have had additional opportunities to drive additional revenue with a little bit of follow-up after the job was done. Any questions on this?
Someone suggested ask about your experience with a small survey and ask about a referral to another family friend.
Excellent. That is an absolutely excellent suggestion, because the referrals are what drives business, drives business, and that's really good. And one of the things on that is you could actually, if you have a web page, have them put a referral on the web page. That's a really good example. Anything else?
Nothing yet.
Yeah. Okay, so we took each one of those major activities. And we put them in our form. So across the top, you see the major steps that we just talked about: to contact the customer, the make the appointment, meet for the quote, etc. And I did not include the last few steps here just to make this a little bit more visible to you. So for each one of these activities, you then identify what the touch points are. How does my business touch the customer? So for that very first one, we have several tasks. When I reached out to see my customer, find my supplier, first I did a web search. I asked my friends. I looked up their webpage if they had one. Most people in this group do not seem to have a webpage. And somehow I found contact information. So I had several touch points with that customer before I ever dealt with them. I found their webpage, the Google search results. Maybe I looked at Yelp and saw some of their feedback on that. Maybe I got feedback from friends and neighbors. All this is before I've ever met them. Take a look at the second one. When I call them to leave a message, first I call them. Some companies will have email. Call them. It's Joe. Here's a message. I had no idea who Joe was. No idea if he was a painter. No idea if he was still in business, and no idea when I would get a call back or if I would get a call back. So then I wait. And I wait. And I wait for a reply. So finally, I get a phone call back and we agree to meet. So there's several touch points here. I have had a touch point with them on the phone, and it could have been email. I have touch point on their website. that I found their contact information there, but touch points in their voicemail system. And this is an area in which they could have probably made some improvements. Can anybody suggest how they might have wanted to improve their voicemail? So one of the things that they could have done was they could have said, "Hi, this is Joe the painter, specializing in commercial and residential business. Leave me a message and we return your call within 24 hours." When people are willing to wait, but they just need to have reasonable expectations set for them. So one of the things that they could have done here was they could have had a better voicemail message. Very simple, costs absolutely nothing, but improves the customer experience. So once you've mapped out those tasks and what the touch points are, now you kind of get into how people feel. You're going to add the emotions that they're having, what's motivating them to reach out to you. What are the pain points that they're dealing with? And what are the obstacles they may encounter? And then rating the customer experience, which is, yeah, kind of neutral. Was it a bad experience or was it a good, positive experience? So let's take a look at our example again. When I reached out to them, I was kind of like concerned. I wanted to make sure that they could do my business. Wasn't sure if I had the right guy. Wasn't sure I could afford them. And my obstacles were making sure that I got the right person. Now on that first step, I didn't expect a whole lot when I looked them up. So I gave that a neutral rating. However, when I called and got the voicemail, not knowing who I was reaching out to, not knowing if I had the right person, and not knowing when I'd get back from them, I rated that negative. This is an area where there's some opportunities for improvement. So now we know the who. We know who our customers are. Those customers that drive 90% of our revenue or profits. We understand their customer experience, how they touch our business, but more importantly, what that drives in them, how they feel about it, as opposed to what we think works effectively. And now we can go back and take a look at it a little bit closer to evaluate what the opportunities are for improvement. So with that, are there any questions on mapping the customer journey?
So there was a couple of suggestions that you could include a company name when answering the phone instead of just saying Joe.
Excellent. And some of our clients will actually have two lines on their phone, one for personal and one for business, or they'll use Google. I don't know exactly how it works. They'll use Google phone numbers to help them do exactly that.
Herbert said customer journey can create or raise a competitive advantage for a service in website, for example. So that was a question.
Could you repeat that, please? I didn't understand
Yeah.
that.
Customer journey can create or raise a competitive advantage for a service in a website, for example.
Absolutely. The improved customer service is a competitive advantage because customers are going to stick with you. They're going to be less likely to leave, and they're going to prefer you over the guy down the street. I mean, I could think about this one restaurant we go to, and half the time is closed, so we don't go there anymore, right? Because it doesn't provide good customer experience. So that's an excellent point. Thank you. Anything else, Laura?
Nothing else.
Okay. All right, pop quiz. True or false? Once you've completed this, once you've done this analysis, you don't need to do it again. What do you think?
True or false, everybody? False. Anyone else? False, false, false.
You got it covered. So yes, you are. You're right. This is false. And the reason this is false is because things change. Your customer base may change. They may mature. They may be in a different economic situation. The economy could change, or the supporting platforms could change. Expectations could change. Think about how all of our expectations have changed over the past maybe 10 years about delivery. I used to be very happy to wait 7 to 10 days for a delivery from my local store. Now I expect it the next day with Amazon Prime. So this is something that you should do once a year as part of your strategic planning process. So before we move on to the next step, are there any questions?
Any questions, everybody? No questions.
All right. So our first step was identifying the customers and understanding them. The second was taking a look at the journey map. And now we're ready to try to identify opportunities. And this is actually kind of a simple exercise that you can repeat over and over again and always identify opportunities. Not only that, but a lot of the opportunities you're going to identify aren't going to cost you anything. Think about that voicemail thing where we identified the opportunity to just change our voicemail message. It costs us absolutely nothing. It can be quickly done. So in this step, what you're going to do is take each one of those major activities and you're going to ask yourself a few questions. So below I've listed the questions, and if you have anything that you'd like to think we should add, let me know, because we can certainly do that. The first is, were the customer's expectations met? Now, if you take a look at that first step that I did, I reached out, I found their information, my expectations were met. Did the customer experience delay? Well, yeah, I did experience delay. I experienced delay when I left a voicemail and did not get a response immediately. Now, that might be a reasonable expectation, but it could have been improved if I had known when to expect a return phone call. Did the customer experience frustration? Yep. I really was frustrated by the time I got through calling the painters because I was not sure if any of them were going to return my phone call. I was not sure if any of them were even the right people. And so this was something that was much more difficult from a customer standpoint than it ever had to be. Does the customer have the information that they need? In this case, no, I didn't have the information I needed. I didn't know what services these individual painters provided. So that was a little bit of a problem. And then finally, are all the customer activities required? In this case, they probably were. I mean, you as a customer, you've got to reach out. I don't know that that could have been avoided. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to take a look at it and provide what opportunities that you see for improvement, and we'll talk about them. Let's take a few minutes, put this chart back up, and what kind of ideas do you see that the painters could have improved their service to their customer? Maybe take 2 minutes there.
All right, go ahead, type those in. The first one that has to be addressed is the negative, right? I mean,
Say it again, please.
the first one that needs to be addressed is the negative.
Well, that's probably get your biggest bang for the buck.
Anyone have any ideas?
Oh no. Okay, well I can start. I had start to get things going here a little bit. So on the first step, I did my search for the painter. If the painters had had a Google business thing, that would have raised up their visibility, and I would have seen them quicker. It would have made them more obvious to me, and it would have created a profile that I could have used to help me select the painter. So that's a potential improvement right there that can be done for minimal effort and doesn't cost anything.
All right, I have one for the quote. Perhaps email it and then call the customer a few days later, because if it goes to spam, we won't know that. And the customer can think that we're not following through.
And actually, that happened to me when so excellent. That's a great thing that if you don't hear back to follow up with them, that's good because a lot of times these things do go to spam. Anything else?
Mm, no, but there's a question.
Okay, what's the question?
About the customer profile. I believe you stated to pick 1 to 3 customers and create a profile. However, should we display this profile in our office? Some people may read the profile and it seems to contain some confidential info like age and income. Or do we create a fake profile based loosely on existing customers?
Excellent question. So, for example, you might have a profile that is of people like me, but not me. So you wouldn't say the Kosoviches, but you might say, hey, most of our customers are retired suburban people. So that's a really good point. You would not want to post the profile of an individual customer. You would want to genericize it. Thank you for that question. That's a really good point. Anything else, Lauren?
Nothing else.
All right. So some other opportunities that could help our painter. We talked about the voicemail. We talked about them being a little bit more responsive and letting people know when they would come back. So perhaps when they made the appointment and came out for the quote, they actually had a checklist and said, here's the services I provide. Which one of these you're interested in? That would have been a potential thing. When they provided me with the quote, that was a really good point that you made about making sure that they actually get it. That was something that we'll add here. The other area that I think that there's a huge amount of opportunity for improvement here is at the end of the game. Once I dealt with this painter, I never heard from them again. It would have been really nice if I had received maybe a thank you note from them. Maybe they could have provided me a survey with questions saying, how did we do? Maybe the following spring, they could have followed up with a, do you need anything this year type email. They missed an opportunity there that they could have increased their relationship with their customers if they had done those. So anything else before we move on? All right, so today we talked about a 3-step process. The 3-step process helped us evaluate the customer journey and identify opportunities for improving that experience with the idea of driving underlying profitability through improved customer satisfaction, improved customer retention, and improved word of mouth. The 3 steps were first, understanding your customer, and we did that through the persona, which is a generic representation of your top customers that are driving your revenue. The second is mapping the customer journey, where we identified each of the touch points where our customer touches us and how they reacted to that, how the experience was for the customer. And then finally, we identified opportunities using a simple checklist that evaluated how the customer's experience could be improved each step along the way. So now it's your turn. I'm going to challenge you. Later on this afternoon, Laura's going to be sending out this package as well as the templates that you saw being used. I challenge you to use them to evaluate one of your simple processes and identify how you might want to improve that customer experience. Remembering that not everything costs anything in either time or terms of money. As you go forward with this exercise, if you need any support, feel free to reach out to your mentor from SCORE. If you don't have a mentor, well, that's easy enough to solve. You can go to score.akron, select Find a Mentor, and you can either specify a mentor, select someone you want to work with, or you can ask to have someone assigned for you. And my email is at the bottom of the page, so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be glad to get back to you. So before we wrap up, are there any other additional questions, comments, or suggestions?
Okay, everybody. anything you want to type in, you can even raise your hand. If you had some direct questions you wanted to ask, that's fine too. Nothing yet, but we'll give it another minute or two. Sometimes it takes a little time to type
Yeah,
something, and then there's this dead space in the workshop.
yeah, and if you do think of anything afterwards and you want to just drop me a line, I'm pretty good about returning emails. All
Thank
right.
you.
So if there are no additional questions, I want to thank you very much for your time. I hope you found this a valuable experience. Again, if you have any questions or suggestions for improvement, please let me know because we'd love to hear from you. So
All
thank
right,
you,
everybody.
and back to you, Laura.
Thank you. So again, you'll get the email later today from me with the documents, the slides, as well as a link to the recorded video. And thank you for joining us. Go to the website for any more workshops that you might be interested in. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.